Kitchen and Pots. Once upon a chilling autumn night, in the quaint little town of Willowbrook, nestled far away from the hustle and bustle of city life, there lived a modest family of three. The Owens family, comprised of Sarah, Mark, and their 8-year-old daughter, Emily, resided in a cozy, century-old cottage at the town's end. Willowbrook was known for its serene atmosphere, friendly neighbors, and a deep sense of community. However, the Owens family was about to experience something far from ordinary. It all began one eerie evening when the wind howled like a tormented soul outside their cottage. The ancient trees that surrounded their home seemed to whisper secrets to each other. The moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows through the lace curtains that adorned the kitchen window. Sarah had just tucked Emily into bed, kissed her goodnight, and made her way to the kitchen to prepare a warm cup of tea. Mark, a construction worker, had yet to return from his late-night shift. The kitchen, usually a place of comfort and warmth, now seemed to hold an inexplicable sense of dread. As Sarah set the kettle on the stove, she noticed something peculiar. The kitchen pots, neatly arranged on the hooks attached to the wall, began to sway gently. At first, she attributed it to the wind's draft, but the windows were securely shut. Her unease grew as the pots continued their eerie dance, swinging back and forth as if possessed. Sarah, her heart racing, called out for Emily, thinking perhaps her daughter was playing a prank. Emily, frightened by her mother's tone, hurried into the kitchen, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mom, what's wrong?" Emily asked, her voice quivering. Sarah, trying to maintain composure, replied, "It's nothing, sweetheart. Mommy's just being silly. Go back to bed." But as Emily turned to leave, she glanced at the pots and gasped, "Mom, look!" To Sarah's horror, the pots were now spinning wildly, clanging against each other in a cacophony of metal. It was impossible, and yet there it was, kitchenware moving on its own accord. Panic gripped Sarah as she grabbed Emily and rushed to the front door, desperately trying to escape the inexplicable terror. Just as they reached the threshold, Mark returned home, his tired eyes widening in disbelief as he saw his wife and daughter pale-faced and trembling. Without a word, he ushered them outside and locked the front door, leaving the haunted kitchen behind. As days turned into nights, the Owens family could find no rational explanation for the kitchen pot's malevolent movements. They consulted priests, mediums, and paranormal investigators, but none could provide an answer. Sleep-deprived and terrified, they decided to leave their beloved cottage behind and move to the heart of Willowbrook, bidding farewell to the eerie end of town. To this day, the cottage stands empty, its kitchen pots still swaying in the moonlight, a sinister mystery unsolved. Willowbrook residents speak of it only in hushed tones, as a place where the ordinary and the supernatural intersect, a place where the pots move in the dead of night, their secrets locked away, waiting for the next curious soul to unravel the haunting truth. Timmy and the Nightmarish Kitchen. Once upon a time, in a small, decrepit house nestled at the edge of a dark and gloomy forest, lived a young boy named Timmy. Timmy was an orphan, left to fend for himself in this desolate place. His only solace was a dilapidated kitchen that stood at the heart of his miserable existence. This kitchen was a truly horrifying sight to behold. Its walls were covered in peeling floral wallpaper that seemed to ooze with dampness and despair. The ceiling sagged ominously, threatening to collapse at any moment, while the floor was a mosaic of cracked tiles, each one hiding a grim secret of the past. An old, flickering fluorescent light barely illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows that danced and whispered secrets in the corners. The cupboards were filled with dusty, expired cans and boxes of food, relics from a time long forgotten. The refrigerator, a monstrous metal beast, hummed with a sinister undertone, its interior home to a collection of moldy leftovers and expired condiments. One fateful night, hunger gnawed at Timmy's empty stomach. He ventured into the kitchen, knowing that his options were limited, but he had no choice. The air in the kitchen was thick with a sense of foreboding, as he turned the rusty doorknob and stepped inside. The creaking door seemed to protest his entry, as though the kitchen itself was a sentient being with a grudge against him. He opened the cupboards to find nothing but the ghostly echoes of meals past. The shelves were lined with cans and boxes whose labels had faded into obscurity, leaving behind a lingering aura of disappointment. Timmy's fingers brushed against cobwebs as he reached for a can, only to recoil when he realized that the contents had become a breeding ground for spiders. The refrigerator stared back at him with a cold, malevolent glare. Its once white exterior was now yellowed and cracked, and it emitted a low, ominous hum that sent shivers down Timmy's spine. He cautiously pulled open the fridge door, revealing a chilling sight. The interior was a putrid landscape of spoiled milk cartons, moldy cheese, and rotting vegetables. A noxious odor, a cocktail of decay and despair, enveloped him like a foul fog. Timmy sighed, resigned to his fate. He knew that he had no other options, no other sources of sustenance in this forsaken place. He spotted a single lonely egg nestled in a corner of the fridge, its shell discolored and pitted with age. His stomach growled with hunger, a relentless reminder of his desperation. He cracked the egg into a grimy pan, and the sound echoed through the silent kitchen like a death knell. The sizzle of the egg hitting the pan seemed out of place, a grotesque contrast to the kitchen's eerie stillness. As he cooked the egg, the room seemed to grow colder, the shadows darker. Timmy couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, waiting for him to falter. Each bite of the egg tasted of bitterness and despair, a reflection of his miserable existence. His hunger was not just for food, but also for the warmth of a family, for a place to call home. But in this dreadful kitchen, he was condemned to suffer, a hungry and forsaken boy, forever lost in the nightmarish depths of his own existence. Suddenly, a chilling breeze swept through the kitchen, extinguishing the flickering light. Timmy was plunged into darkness, his heart pounding. He heard a faint, ghostly whisper in the shadows, a voice that seemed to say, "You are forever trapped here, alone and hungry." Tears welled up in Timmy's eyes as he huddled in the cold and dark kitchen. He realized that he was not only hungry for food, but also for the warmth of a family, for a place to call home. But in this dreadful kitchen, he was condemned to suffer, a hungry and forsaken boy, forever lost in the nightmarish depths of his own existence. The shadows continued to whisper, and the kitchen seemed to close in around him, as though the walls were squeezing the life out of him. Timmy's cries echoed in the darkness, unheard by the world outside. He was trapped, a prisoner of this horrifying kitchen, destined to endure its horrors for all eternity. The Midnight Kitchen Catastrophe. It was a sweltering summer night, the clock striking 3 a.m. as the Johnson family returned from a long road trip across the United States. Exhausted but famished, they decided to rustle up a late-night meal in their quaint kitchen. The kitchen was a hub of culinary experiments and laughter, with the tantalizing aroma of dishes representing their diverse backgrounds. David, a skilled cook, decided to prepare his famous Southern barbecue ribs, a dish that had always been a crowd pleaser. As he lovingly rubbed the spices onto the meat, the rest of the family, consisting of his wife Maria and their 2 children, Sarah and Ethan, gathered around the kitchen island. Just as David placed the marinated ribs on the sizzling grill, an unexpected power surge surged through the house, plunging them into darkness. The sudden blackout startled everyone, but they weren't too concerned. Power outages were not uncommon in their area. Maria grabbed her phone to use its flashlight, while David and the kids searched for candles. As they were about to light the candles, a loud, ominous pop reverberated through the kitchen, followed by sparks that flew from an outlet near the stove. Panic set in as David swiftly shut off the main power supply to prevent further electrical issues. In the dim candlelight, they realized that the kitchen was rapidly filling with smoke. The ribs on the grill had ignited, turning the once cozy kitchen into a terrifying inferno. Maria screamed, and the children gasped in fear as the fire surged higher. The smoke detector wailed, adding to the chaos and alarm. David, in a moment of instinct, grabbed the fire extinguisher from beneath the sink and aimed it at the blaze, hoping to quell the flames that threatened to engulf their beloved kitchen. Spraying the fire extinguisher felt like an eternity, but eventually the flames began to retreat. Coughing and wheezing, they flung open the windows and fled outside, relieved to have escaped the clutches of the deadly fire. The fire department arrived within minutes, extinguishing the remnants of the blaze. It was a close call, and the kitchen bore the scars of the intense battle, with charred walls and a blackened ceiling. The family stood together, their faces smudged with soot, realizing just how close they had come to catastrophe. In the aftermath, they knew that their kitchen would require extensive repairs, but the safety of their family was paramount. This night had taught them a profound lesson about the unpredictability of life and the importance of being prepared for emergencies. They would forever remember the midnight kitchen catastrophe, a terrifying ordeal that brought them closer as a family, a reminder of the preciousness of each moment, and a story they would recount for generations to come.